people have read my book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Would you raise your hand? Thanks. For those that haven't, don't worry, I'll be talking a little bit about it today. But before I begin, I want to thank all of you for being here. Single largest audience I've ever spoken to, so my knees are a little shaky. And I want to thank the Yeager family for having me here. I'm honored to be in the presence of such alive people, so thank you very much. Before I begin, I'll give you a quick synopsis of my background. As I said, my name is Robert Kiyosaki. It sounds like Kawasaki. I wish it was Kawasaki. I would be a playboy in Tokyo today. But the name is Kiyosaki, and I am fourth generation Japanese American. I was raised in Hawaii. And when anybody comes up to speak to me in Japanese, I will have no idea what you're saying. I was raised in Hawaii and educated in New York. I went to, I love New York. When I was in high school, I was given 2 congressional nominations, one to the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, the other one to the United States Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York. So when I was looking at the brochures, wondering which school I was going to attend, I looked at the United States Naval Academy in 1965 when I graduated. Guess how much an ensign made in the United States Navy in 1965? $200 a month. And then I looked at the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and guess how much a graduate from the United States Merchant Marine Academy made in 1965? It was $2,000 a month. So when I looked at those 2 numbers, I said, now which one will it be? You know? So I went to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. I graduated in 1969. And my first ship, what the Merchant Marine Academy does is it trains ship's officers. So I sailed on the Love Boat as a 3rd mate. I also sailed on tankers for Standard Oil of California. My first port of call as a graduate in June of 1969 was a port called Valdez, Alaska. How many people have heard of Valdez, Alaska? Well, I wasn't the guy that hit the reef. So in graduating in 1969, I was making about $42,000 a year, which is not bad for a 22-year-old kid. Back in 1969, it's worth a little bit more than it is today. And I was doing okay. But there was a thing in 1969 called the Vietnam War, and that was weighing heavily on my mind. And the reason the Vietnam War was weighing heavily was I was draft exempt, much like our president. I was draft exempt because my classification was non-defense vital industry, which means I was helping the war effort by delivering oil back and forth to the war zone. Yet it still disturbed me, so in 1969 I resigned from Standard Oil, letting go of a $42,000 a year job with 5 months vacation a year, and I took that $200 a month job with the United States Marine Corps as a lieutenant. And so in 1969, I reported to a place called Pensacola, Florida, where I went to Naval Flight Training School, and in 2 years I was in the place called Vietnam, defending our country and our president. So one of the only thing that disturbed me was it took 6 years, to sign up took 6 years out of my life. That was a long time. I could have been president in that time. Or governor. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's a true story. Some people come up to me and say, is it really a true story? I go, yes, it is. One's about my real dad, who was a PhD in education. Brilliant man, he graduated from university in less than 2 years. He then went on to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University. The guy was an academic genius. And then my other dad was my best friend's father. And my best friend's father was a high school dropout. Now, guess what, which was the rich dad? The guy that dropped out of school, you know, because he didn't go to school. He didn't mess his mind up. Anyway, both dads recommended I go to college anyway. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is about the story of these two different fathers recommending different things for me. For instance, my poor dad, the PhD, he always said to me, go to school, get good grades so you can find a nice, safe, secure, what? Job. And that was good if you were born before 1950 or 30, but today there isn't really a safe, secure job. You don't pay that well anyway. And what my rich dad said to me was, don't listen to your old man, listen to what I have to say. And my rich dad said to me, don't work for anybody else, build businesses. And what he said to me was, thank you. So I have, since a little kid, have been building businesses. And some of you, I talked to the rising stars yesterday, the directs. And I talked to them about one of the businesses that some of you may have heard of, and I was one of the first nylon and Velcro wallet people in the world. We built that company, took it way up very quickly, became very successful, and went down very quickly, but we still launched it. What I'm going to be talking to you today about is really more, not so much about my rich dad, but my poor dad. Because in many ways, is when I made enough money in 1940, when I was 47, I said, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? This was in 1994. And what I decided to do was keep doing what I was doing, build companies. But also I realized I needed to become a teacher like my poor dad, because I'm really more like him than my rich dad. So what I'm doing these days is I'm actually teaching, because my poor dad was a great teacher, brilliant teacher, great leader. I'm going to be teaching what my rich dad taught me. So that's what I'm doing today, and that's why I wrote this book, and that's why I'm here. So thank you. So I'm going to be talking today about 3 different kinds of intelligences. My poor dad, the PhD, he always stressed academic intelligence. And if I don't spell correctly, I wasn't very good with academic intelligence. And academic intelligence, some people call it the 3 R's, which is reading, writing, and what? Arithmetic. And it's very important. This is what you go to school for. And there's a lot of people, especially some of my father's friends, they would say to me, you know, I'm a PhD, or I'm the only guy in my family with only a bachelor's degree. Everybody else has master's and doctorate degrees in my family. And oftentimes I'm criticized because they say, well, I got a PhD. And so they ask me, what have I got? I said, cash. What do you got? Anyway, so this is what more or less both my dads, rich dad and poor dad, recommended. They said, go to school, get the degree, and then get out. But the difference was my rich dad said, go and build companies. And if I was going to build companies, I needed a different kind of intelligence. And the kind of intelligence I needed was I still can't spell. I flunked out of high school twice because I couldn't spell. And I told my teacher that it was a very uncreative mind that couldn't spell a single word 4 different ways. They still flunked me. So I'll go into financial intelligence in a little while. So like I said, I'm going to talk about three intelligence. One's academic, one's financial. But for there to be financial intelligence, like if you look at academic intelligence, what's important is the ability to read words. To have financial intelligence, you have to be able to read numbers. And that's what school does not teach, is this subject over here called what's the word? Financial what? Literacy. The ability to read financial statements and numbers. My rich dad said this to me at a very young age. The person that can read numbers has more power over somebody who cannot. In other words, somebody who was financially literate had more power over somebody who was academically inclined. So that's why I stress I learn to be financially literate. And that's what Rich Dad, Poor Dad's about, is very simply what my rich dad taught me at a very young age. And what he taught me about financial literacy was based upon a very important word. What's the word? Cash flows. My favorite words in the whole world. And so my rich dad said to me, he says, when you talk to your banker or your real estate agent, to your account generally says your house is an asset. He says, they're inaccurate. That's why they're not rich. And so what rich dad taught me, the difference was between an asset and a liability was dependent upon the word called cash flow. That's what made something an asset or a liability. So if the cash flow flowed into your income or into your pocket, then it was an asset. So I'll say it again. So if the cash flowed into your pocket, it was an asset. I was 9 years old. This is not that tough. I understood that. I said, that's good. For those of you who want something exciting, go and read a dictionary or a financial book, what they define an asset as, and you'll get really confused. And so this is the cash flow pattern of an asset, and this is the cash flow pattern of a liability. So very simply, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is something that what? Takes money from your pocket. So, a person's house. A house. Could a house be an asset? Yes, as long as it what? Puts money in your pocket. Could a house be a liability? Yes, if it what? Takes money from your pocket. And so what I was talking about in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is my poor dad always said to me, he said, our house is our biggest investment. And my rich dad said to that, if your house is an investment, you're in trouble. And it says it is our biggest asset, and my rich dad said, if it's taking money from your pocket, it's not an asset, it's a liability. And that's all you need to know for financial literacy, is know which way the cash is flowing, okay? Now, going back to financial literacy is the basis of financial intelligence. So if you look at an income statement and a balance sheet here, what I'll show you really quickly is what most people have is they go to school so they can get themselves a nice, safe, secure what? Job. And what does job stand for? Just over broke. And the reason it's just over broke, and the reason people have a hard time getting ahead, is because the income I'll show you the cash flow patterns right now. This is the cash flow pattern of a poor person. In other words, money comes in and money goes out. Poor. If they don't change that pattern, they'll always be poor. This here is the cash flow pattern of a middle-class person. A middle-class person generally, because they have a good education and they have a nice, safe, secure what? Job, the bank will give them a mortgage. And mortgage stands for an agreement until death, the French word, mortier. That's not too intelligent, you know? So when I look at a person's income statement or balance sheet, I can tell just by looking at cash flow whether the person, if they keep doing it, will be a poor person all their life or a middle-class person. And what my rich dad said, what the rich do is they mind their own businesses, they build assets, and the cash flow flies that way. So that's the cash flow pattern of a rich person. So if you want to be financially intelligent, you've got to take control of your cash flow. Now the problem is since most people in school are not taught anything about financial literacy or financial literacy, and nothing about financial intelligence, is most people fall into this pattern here. Okay? And what they wind up doing is they don't mind their own business, they mind everybody else's business. So what they mind over here is they make their boss rich. They work really hard. And then over here they make the government really rich, because what's the first line item expense for the average person? Tax. They make the government rich. And over here they work very hard for the banker, the money lender. So the reason the average middle class person cannot get ahead is, number one, they think their house is an asset, but it's really a liability. Their car is an asset or liability. A liability for most people. And they got credit card debt, vacation debt, they got their suits and ties and their Gucci shoes, and they're in debt up to their eyeballs with credit cards. And what this looks like over here, if you notice here, this pattern, the great middle class pattern, the highly educated pattern. What my rich dad said financial intelligence was very simply, were you smarter than your money, or was your money smarter than you? If you were financially intelligent, you would be able to direct your cash flow. If you're not too intelligent, your boss, the government, and the banker would direct your cash flow. That's not too intelligent. That's why you find a lot of people who've gone to school, PhDs, etc. They have high academic intelligence, but very low what? Financial intelligence. And so what they're not in control of is their cash flow. If you want to be successful, you've got to change the direction of the flow. Because this pattern over here, what that looks like, if you look at it going down into the liability column, out the expense column, it looks like one of those treadmills. You know, I go to the gym, it looks like this. So what happens to an individual is they go to school, they get the good grades, they graduate, and they get themselves a job. And they're doing pretty good, you know. 22 years old, 23 years old. Then they go and they meet the boy or girl of their what? Dreams. And they decide to get what? Married. And the boy or girl of the dreams doing the same thing. They got two incomes. They say, well, two incomes can live just as good as what? One. They decide to get married, and now they're going like this. So the first thing they got to buy when you get married is the banker tells you you got too much income, so you're paying too much in taxes, so you better buy a what? House, because the government's going to give you a tax break for it. Anytime the government gives you something, be careful, okay? I don't trust them that much. So here's this young couple, now they got a mortgage, and they're going like this, and they're working really hard, and they're going, oh yeah, I'm a hard-working individual. But all of a sudden they're short of cash now, so they got to work harder, so they make the boss richer. They pay more in taxes, and they're making the bank rich, and of course they got to buy a BMW to match their lifestyle of their house. And so they're like this, yeah, we're doing really good, hard-working people, you know. And then all of a sudden, she says to him, guess what, dear? I'm going to have a what? Baby. Oh, so wonderful. And the child comes, and pretty soon the old guy is right like this. He's working hard. He's running down. He's in this. This is called a rat race. He's going to work. He's busting his you-know-what. He's working hard. He gets another pay raise. The government takes more, and he gets further into debt because he's got to buy a bigger house because the government said go into debt because you're going to get mortgage deduction. Okay, good. I'm working hard. And you come up to him and you say, hey, I want to show you a plan. What do you mean you're going to show me a plan? I don't have time to look at the plan. I'm so busy working hard. Am I right? Because they went to school, they may be academically intelligent, but they're not too what? Financially intelligent. And I'm out of breath just doing that. Back to the gym. And what happens if you're not too financially intelligent is you go up to them and they're like this, you know? And you say, well, how's your money? Oh, no problem, I'm doing good, you know? I'll get a pay raise in 3 years. Oh, yeah, yes. I'm going to buy a bigger house, get a tax break, you know? How many people have talked to that person? And what they say to you is, I'm feeling, what's the word? Fine. And what they're really saying to you is that they're feeling what fine stands to is they're feeling financially insecure, neurotic, and emotional. How many people ever felt fine in your life? And that's what happens when you're not too financially intelligent here. So, I'm out of breath. So that's why it's important to be financially intelligent. Now, I'm going to be, in the spring of 1999, I'll be launching my next book, and that book is called the Cashflow Quadrant. What's it called? The Cashflow what? Quadrant. And I'll show you the Cashflow Quadrant now. I showed it to the directs the other day. This is the Cashflow Quadrant. And I think this has tremendous relevance to your life or your work here. This is what my rich dad showed me. The cash flow quadrant, the E stands for employee. What does E stand for? Employee. Very good. What does S stands for? Self-employed. What does S stand for? Self-employed. B stands for business owner. What does B stand for? Thank you. And I stands for investor. What does I stand for? Investor. So, the reason it's called the cash flow quadrant is because it's where does your cash flow from. So let's say you're a postal worker and you have a W-2, then you're an employee. The trouble with being an employee, who gets taxed the hardest? Employees. That's the problem with getting a nice, safe, secure job. So what a lot of people did during this downsizing days and all that, well, let me first say this. The self-employed person, a lot of people say they own their own businesses, which is true. But there's a difference between a self-employed business person and a business owner. And the difference here is this. A self-employed business person cannot leave the job. In other words, if they left, their income would go up or down. Down. In many cases, this is an electrician, a plumber, a dentist, many small business owners, etc., salespeople. They're self-employed. A business owner, on the other hand, the defining thing my rich dad said between a business owner was a business owner could leave the business for a year or more and come back, and the business would be running better, income would be up, and you could go off for another year if you wanted. And that was a defining difference here between a self-employed business owner and a business owner. Those are the differences. So one of the things that my rich dad taught me is you have to learn to work with people, and you listen to a person's words. I can tell an employee by their words. When somebody comes up to me and says, I'm looking for a nice, safe, secure what? Job with benefits, I know I have somebody who comes from the value system of an employee, the mindset of it. When I meet somebody who says to me, I charge $100 per hour, or I just can't seem to find good employees, or my commission rate is 6%, generally they're self-employed. The problem that I found in education, academic education, is they tell people, my poor dad said was go to school and find a nice, safe, secure what? Job. This is my poor dad's advice. And what my rich dad said to me was, don't bother with that, go this way, build companies, build businesses. My rich dad said to me, if you want job security, own the company. That was the best thing you could do. So I learned to build businesses here. Just as a stat for you, if you're interested, is that the average rich person throughout the world, 30% of their income comes from here and 70% comes from there. And the average poor middle class person, their income comes from here. And that's the big difference there. So that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is to become wealthy, you have to learn to have businesses or other people work for you. So my Rich Dad taught me was this. It says that a business owner, what they're always looking for are excellent systems and excellent people. And that's what I studied, systems and people. There's three kinds of systems primarily in the world today. One's a C corporation. IBM is a C corporation. Most rich people own C corporations. Then in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, another thing came on the line, was called franchises. One of the most famous franchises was what? McDonald's, today the largest landholder in the world. And in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, franchises were considered illegal. And then there came out a new one in the 60s, a thing that most of us are in here, something called network marketing. And that's a business because it's a system with what? People. That's what makes it a system, that the individual can actually move on and have a system and people work for them. I have personally, my oil company, my mining company, my real estate companies, some education companies are primarily C corporations. One of them went public off of the Canadian Exchange in Vancouver. The other one I have here is I've built franchises. But when I looked into it, when I met some individuals who are with the Jaeger organization, I started considering network marketing. I considered building one myself. But the more I looked at, so I went around and I looked at the different organizations, and I came back to this one. There's one reason for it, is in my opinion, what the Jaegers have done is built the best system in the world right now to make the best people. And I did go and do my market research. The reason I love what the Jaegers are doing is because when I met Dexter, I only met him last week for the first time in St. Louis. I've been hearing about this legend. He reminded me exactly of my rich dad. I mean, that guy doesn't think like normal people do. He has a different point of view. But the reason I respect the Jaegers so much is they're very much like my poor dad from the point of view they're dedicated to education first. And so that's why I decided to, my Diamond Up line is Bill and Amy Galvin from Dallas, Texas, to join this business rather than start my own. So the point I'm bringing up here is this: how many people have ever had a hard time talking to one of these people here about this? Okay? It is almost impossible because they do not understand. They do not understand. These people are into job security. They want to know, and these people here, a business owner, and many times when I'm building a business, I may not get paid from anywhere from 1 to 7 years. I have to build a business. When I met my wife, I was building another business. I know she didn't marry me for my money because I didn't have any money. I was building a business. And we worked very hard to build businesses. One of my problems with the school system today is they're still teaching people to look for nice, safe, secure what? Jobs, and it's making them WIMPs. And what WIMP stands for is what does WIMP stand for? Where is my paycheck, sir? And the reason I love talking to you guys, because you're not a pack of wimps. Give yourselves a hand. So the thing I want to talk to you about is a lot of times when I talk to other audiences, most corporations don't invite me in to talk to their employees. They don't like me for some reason. I can't figure out why. Because I predominantly teach business, entrepreneurship and investing when I teach. And so a lot of people want to find their path to financial freedom this way. The problem with this is if they're looking for nice, safe, secure jobs, they're also looking for nice, safe, secure investments. And there aren't any. And that's why they get wiped out. You know, they have this thing called the 401k and mutual funds. I mean, it's a great idea. But investing is a game of winners and losers. And I'm concerned that within the next few years, there's going to be a lot of these guys who are going to get cleaned out. What were they, last week, what they cleaned out? No. So the reason I support what the Jaegers are doing is because, and what each and every one of you is doing, is every time you show the plan, you're giving one of these, oh, excuse me. What was that again? Where is my paycheck, sir? One of these people an opportunity to join the business. Because I will show you the path to the ultra-rich follow. This is the path that Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, who else? Anyway, Trump. What they do is they build businesses. That's what the rich do. And this here is the path of the ultra-rich. They first build businesses, and because they have so much money, they have to invest it somewhere. When I spent time talking to Dexter Jaeger in St. Louis, this is exactly what he does. He builds businesses and he invests. I mean, a lot of people who come here and they try and be investors, but they ain't got enough money to invest, so they gotta play it safe. That makes sense, you guys here? So what you guys are doing, in my opinion, is a smart way to do it. That's the way Bill Gates did it. He builds businesses and he's got so much money, he's got to invest. And that's the path of the ultra-rich. And every time you guys show the plan to one of these people here, you're giving them the opportunity to become ultra-rich. So give yourselves a hand for that. One of the tough parts really quickly is when I meet, I think this is the worst position of all. The reason is the government rips them to shreds. But the problem with this is if these are the really smart people. The trouble with being successful here is what happens if you're good. You get busy. And then you have to work harder. And because you're not very good at managing your cash flow, pretty soon you're like this again. You know, you're working hard, and your cash flow is going out the door. That's why, in my opinion, this is one of the hardest ones. These guys on planet Earth, they're called the rugged individuals. These guys are the Rambos. They're going to do it on their what? Own. They have a song going in their head. Nobody does it better. These guys are perfectionists. I'm not going to be going into that in a little while. So, one of the people said, well, how come I wound up here is in 1994 when I retired, I decided it was time for me to give back what I had been given. And that's why I wrote this book, and I created this game here. Some of you have seen it. It's a game called, what's my favorite word is what? Cash flow. So this is the game box, and that's what I spent my time working on. So I built one of these things here. Okay? For those who look at, look on the screen here. This here is called the rat race. That's where there's a rat in the middle. Actually, it's a self-portrait. And what happens if you go to school with high academic intelligence and low financial intelligence is you wind up in this rat race chasing around these things called paychecks. And it goes round and around. Meanwhile, Dexter Jaeger and the rest of the diamonds are out here on the fast track. And they're saying to you, get out of the what? Rat race. And that's what you guys are really doing, is you're showing people how to get out of the rat race. It's a very important job. They go round and round in here. Now, I recently had this guy come up to me and he says, how much is the game? And I said it was $200. He says, oh, that's too expensive. I can't afford it. I said, good. I said, by the way, I said, how many TV sets do you own? The guy says, I have 3. I said, you get a big screen? He goes, yeah. So how much did that cost you? He says, $3,000. But I got it on easy monthly payments. And I'm feeling fine, he said. So the thing I want to say is, this is not really the game board. This looks like Monopoly. One of the reasons it's $200 is I only produce about a few thousand a year because I don't teach that many people with it. But this here is really the game board. There's an actual income statement and a balance sheet here. This is what makes it worth the money. You know, because if it's not worth any money, if it doesn't teach you anything, the game's not worth anything. It's really an educational package. But I want to show you this here. And this is, like I said, this is really the game. The reason I want to show you this is this on? Can you guys see it? I can't. The reason I want to show you this is what my rich dad taught me was to be financially literate and to look at and be financially intelligent. One of the hardest things about what I think what you guys go through is coming from here to here is most of these people have become addicted to the what? Paycheck. And what my rich dads told me, and I wrote about it in this book, and several people said it got them very angry, was my rich dad, every time he started paying me like 10 cents an hour, what did he do? He took it away. He stopped paying me. And I've had several people come up to me since the book was written and say, that was really cruel, wasn't it? And I said, no, you don't understand something. What my rich dad taught me was this, and you might write this down. He says, if you want to get rich, you got to get rid of that paycheck. He says, the addiction to paychecks is what keeps people poor. Give yourselves a hand on that one. One of the reasons my rich dad was, of course he didn't go to school, but he was really against academic intelligence because he didn't teach anybody financial intelligence. It's left people weak. And what he was talking about here was this. He says that if you go to school, what they teach you are working class values. I'll say it again. He says school teaches you working class values. And what he defined as working class values is, could I have this up on the, sit on or not? Okay, good. He says that when I look at a financial statement, I can tell whether the person's going to be rich, poor, or middle class just by looking at the numbers. I read numbers. I'm not very good with words. I'm pretty good with numbers. Working class values, this is what my poor dad thought was important in life. My poor dad thought a high salary was important. And then after that, my poor dad thought a big house was important. So when I read somebody's financial statement, they're actually showing me what they think inside their head. Does that make sense, you guys here? I can tell who they are by reading it. And the reason my rich dad and Dexter are very much the same is because Dexter says the same thing my rich dad says. Build a business. Mind your own business. Build it here. Because this is where the rich focus. The rich don't focus on a high paycheck. What my rich dad taught me, he says, this is linear thinking. A linear thinking person is a person who thinks, I'm going to work hard for this year, and next year I'm going to get a 10% pay raise. So they get a 10% pay raise, the government takes 6% of it, inflation takes the other 4%. That's not too intelligent. But they wait all year for that. And they wonder why they don't get ahead, so they get a pay raise, they buy a bigger house, and they're in debt up to their eyeballs again. What my rich dad said was that the rich focus on what he considered residual income, or what I call passive income. That what counts to me is not a paycheck, but capital gains, dividends, rental income, income from businesses and all that. And this is what the rich focus on here, just for you to know. It's income in this, and that's every time you guys show the plan, that's what you're doing. Every time you show the plan, you're giving one of these people over here You're giving one of these people over here the opportunity to think like a rich person. So every time you show that this is the, oh, thank you, I apologize. So I just want to say something. When I look at somebody's income statement or financial statement, I don't care whether they're an employee, a business owner, self-employed, or investor. There is a way that the rich think. And what the rich think is important is here and over here. And this is what my rich dad said was the working class. They thought a high-paying job and a big mortgage was important. So every time you show the plan, you're giving an individual an opportunity to think like a rich person. That's what you're doing. What you're saying to them is building the business, and getting residual income is more important than a high-paying job. But that's one of the hardest things to break, because if somebody's addicted to the paycheck, because they're always saying, where's my paycheck, sir? They're addicted. I can't let go of the safe, secure job. You know? How many people have met people like that? I've got to have my paycheck. I'm going to hang on to it. And what the problem is that with our school system, they're teaching people to go for security rather than freedom. And every time you guys present the plan, you're asking somebody to go from security to the idea of freedom. So regardless if they say yes or regardless if they say no, every time you show the plan, what you're saying to yourself is, this is who I stand for. This is who I am. Whether they come along or not, they get an opportunity to decide whether that they're this person or they're this person waiting for their paycheck. Does that make sense, you guys here? So I'll say it again for some of you out there still pussyfooting around, not showing the plan enough. Show it. Show it and show it and show it. And the more you show it, all you're saying to yourself is, this is who I am. Every time you're saying it, this is who I am. So if I could give you the other thing about some of the people I met in Chicago are using my game Cashflow now to talk to people. What the game Cashflow does, some people say this is for my kids. I didn't design this game for kids. This is a very sophisticated, is the only game. This balance sheet, income statement and balance sheet, is what separates this from Monopoly. If it was just Monopoly, it would be a $29.95 game. This is what makes a difference. This is what makes it valuable here. Every time you play this game with a potential prospect, what you have when when you're playing with them, you're actually showing them the difference from the way a working class person thinks and a rich person thinks. So some of the people I know who have bought the game, they're using this as a tool. It builds relationships, and it shows people a different point of view, a different way of thinking. And so the reason I'm up here to support you guys, and I'm supposed to be in West Germany today, the reason I came to talk to you is because I am an educator. And every time you guys show the plan, and if you'd be so kind to play the game with a potential person, you're really educating a lot of people to think like the rich think instead of a working class person. Thank you. So the wonderful thing about Cashflow is as you're playing the game with them, whether you show them the plan before or after, it gives you about 3 hours to talk to them. And if you play this game twice with them, they're going to go, oh, now I know what they're talking about. Now I know what that plan is for. You're trying to get me off the wimp track and get you on the fast track that Dexter, Yeager, and the Diamonds are on. This is the fast track, and that's the whip track. And so every time you show the plan, and if you play the game, you're assisting me in narrowing the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So I thank you all very much for that. Thank you.